it was a wild 43 days record for the government shutdown, but it came to an end as Republicans had enough votes, and they got the help from some Democrats on the House side who voted in favor of the funding bill that ultimately ended the government shutdown. And we want to talk to one of those Democrats who helped bring it to a close. So please welcome everyone, Representative Don Davis, Democrat from the great state of North Carolina. Thanks so much for joining us, sir. Mr. Congressman, first off, just let us know why you said, okay, I'm going to break with my party here and go with the Republicans on this funding bill.
Yes, thank you. So I originally voted against the CR to have an honest, genuine conversation about health insurance. I continue to hear those concerns from constituents across the district. And as time continued, as this is now known as the longest shutdown in the history of our nation, as time continued to progress, I continue to hear more and more from constituents. Some were just deeply concerned. They were stressed, depressed. One even came to me in tears saying, please reopen the government. I just wanted to acknowledge constituents that I was hearing from to let them know I hear you and that, yes, we do need to open the government, and you can open the government and still have the conversations. We need to, because the conversation's not over and shouldn't be over, continue to talk about health insurance, how we deliver health care in this nation. And there have been meaningful reforms. I signed on to a bill with Representative Kiggins to do a one-year extension, whether you do a one-year extension to allow more time to get to a real solutions and meaningful reforms. We need to keep all these options on the table. This vote was simply for constituents and ultimately, I believe, the American people.
Mr. Congressman, how confident are you that from now until the end of the January that there will be some talks on both sides for these ACA credits so another shutdown doesn't happen when the end of January comes?
So we've cast a vote, and since the vote has been cast, there's communication that's already taken place in a bipartisan way of how we can look at health insurance, and especially those who've been purchasing insurance on the marketplace. So those conversations are still taking place, and I just want to give everyone. I was talking to a gentleman. He said, "My I have a 2005 vehicle. I paid $250 a month. And when I looked at my premium increase, it would be three times what I'm paying in a car payment right now. How do I replace my vehicle?" I want to give reassurance to all those out there that we can. And I think we have an obligation and responsibility to continue this conversation and look at how we can deliver health insurance in this country in the most responsible way and in a way that we can get meaningful legislation, not just through the Senate, but through the House.
And Representative Davis, what do you make of the notion that some may say, okay, if the Democrats wanted to dig in, why didn't they just dig in and get something out of this more substantial rather than they had the CR, you had the CR where you could have not even had this shutdown and maybe negotiated it still now in those same ways. Why go through these 43 days? Have the shutdown impact so many and then now say, okay, now we're going to be able to talk?
Well, if I had it my way, we would not go through the 40 days of this shutdown. I would have loved to have the conversation before the government originally shut down. But obviously, I would have loved to have seen us have meaningful conversations sooner. And then we began to talk over each other a little bit. Some saying, hey, we really are interested in health insurance, ACA tax credits. Others say we'll have those conversations after the government's reopened. I mean, people are looking at all this, by the way, and saying, this is the problem I have with DC is broken. I mean, members of Congress need to go and act like adults. You're acting like kids. And so often that's what I heard. And for me, at the end, so many shared concerns that they were truly suffering. They were going through a lot of pain. They were hurting. And for me, especially going into the holidays, I felt that it was time that we had to ease some of that pain. And especially having worn a uniform, served our country in the Air Force as a veteran, military families I've heard from, spouses, heard from veterans. I mean, we needed to get the government up and running again.
Yeah, so many impacted, no doubt about it. And sir, what did you make too about there was this provision from the Senate side that would allow senators that were impacted by this Arctic frost investigation to sue. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson wasn't happy with it. There is going to be a vote later in the week. What did you make of all this?
Once again, Washington, D.C. People lose trust and confidence when things like that's taking place. You're sneaking things in, and at the end of the day, we're not being transparent. I look forward and I'm hoping that we're able to vote to repeal that provision really soon.
And then lastly, sir, I wanted to get your take and see if you have been hearing anything. There is some reports out there that as early as this weekend in places like Charlotte and even in New Orleans, there is going to be some federal operations going with Border Patrol, ICE agents. What have you been hearing in North Carolina right now?
Yeah, what I would say is I was raised to always be respectful to law enforcement, and I believe that would be my call to continue to urge everyone to cooperate, to be respectful. At the same time, I would ask for ICE to make sure that we are being respectful and carrying out operations. But ultimately, I represent 22 very rural communities. And as I'm moving in and out across my district, this is what I know. When you talk about our local law enforcement offices, we must get resources into these communities. You have some of the smaller departments out there are having to make critical decisions. How do they continue their operations? And we've been engaged in this space and this work, trying to help stand up and keep our law enforcement departments together. They need resources, and coupled with good training, we can actually strengthen law enforcement, which strengthens safety in our communities and our neighborhoods and protect our businesses.
Why do you think it's not seen the way that you mentioned it? Why isn't it seen like that in many communities when ICE comes in? It seems like it's more of a negative impact when, at the end of the day, it seems like many would argue that they're going to try to prevent criminals from being in those areas that shouldn't be.
I can't speak for everyone across this country, but what I can speak for is making sure that we are providing safe communities. And especially for me, my greatest charge is ensuring public safety, being tough on crime, and especially in these rural areas. I just want to see resources, and I would love to have more conversations about how we are bringing resources in our law enforcement communities in rural America in particular. And I don't believe there's enough of these conversations that are taking place. And I believe the people in rural America deserves just the same safety that others receive in other places.
And there you go. Representative Davis, thanks so much for joining us on Live Now from Fox. Really a pivotal week on Capitol Hill today, this week. So we appreciate your time, and thanks again for joining us on Live Now.
Thank you.